Welcome everyone to Senate Education, Tuesday, April 16th, 2:32 in the afternoon. Mr. Lafayette, thank you for joining us. You sent us an email asking for request to H871. We have them right in front of us and wondering if you would take us through them and so the committee understands your reasoning for each.
Okay, that sounds great. So, I asked originally, I think it was on page 3.
Committee knows we added them tentatively into the bill. So if Mr. Lafayette directs us to a certain page, it should be there, and then we can decide whether or not we want it or we pull it.
Okay, sounds great. So on page 3 of 16 of the bill, there's note number H, which is an energy audit with long-term planning for reduction of carbon dioxide and energy use. And this really goes in line with some of the other state energy bills on climate change that you guys have had that have been passed in other congressional settings. But really our thought on this is that, the state has put out guidelines for carbon dioxide reduction and energy use. So this kind of review would be in line with other state bills and the long-term goal of getting off of fossil fuels.
Senator
Eric, can you give us just super quick, like what an energy audit looks like for a school?
Yeah, so an energy audit is essentially going to be a full an assessment of the building, and it's going to look at its electrical use, its fossil fuel use, or biomass if it's using biomass, and its water use. And what you're doing is you're comparing its energy use typically to other peers in the state of Vermont. So that's part of what's called that energy use index that is talked about lower in the process. But really the idea with the energy audit is that you're looking at how the building is currently performing. And then part of the audit is providing measures that will reduce their energy consumption with an associated cost to that measure. And then what the guaranteed savings are going to be with it.
And who would do an energy audit? Who does one?
An energy service company would do an energy audit. So somebody like ourselves, an engineering firm could certainly do an energy audit as well. And then there's companies specifically in the state of Vermont that are working with the municipalities doing, I think Du Bois and King is doing the energy audits for all the state buildings, municipal buildings right now.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Archie.
Thank you. On average, how much does an energy audit usually cost for a SU?
For an SU, well, in our business model, we actually provide the energy audits up front at no cost to the group, and that's part of our performance contracting deal that we have with them. If you were to go to say do maybe like a typical elementary school at say 30,000 square foot elementary school that might house a couple hundred kids, you're probably looking at between around $5,000 to $7,000 in cost if you were going to work with engineering firms.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to please, Senator Weeks?
So just out of curiosity, can we get by with the language, essentially truncating the sentence to say to provide an energy audit for long-term planning, period? I mean, we understand there are a variety of goals for energy audits. And I'm just not sure the second part of the sentence is really.
I agree with you on that. I think the only thing, it is a little bit redundant in the fact that when you're talking about energy use, that is what an energy audit is. My only part that I would put out there is that carbon dioxide emissions isn't always looked at during an energy audit. And I do think that having some language in there of looking at their CO2 production and alternate sources of energy use is in line with other bills that have been passed by the legislature.
Senator Archie. Did you have a follow-up, Senator Weeks?
No, that'll be something different.
Senator Weeks.
I think so. This might be a question for Senate Natural Resources, actually, a member of that committee, but I'm trying to think about the other statewide goals and plans that we have, broadly speaking, that look at the long-term reduction CO2 and energy use. And I mean, obviously I support CO2 reduction, but I also want to be wary of being duplicative and creating work for an SU that's already being covered under any other energy plans that we have statewide right now for state buildings and town buildings. But I think that would require following up with set of natural resources to see. I'm sure they'll.
We're inviting Peter Sterling in, and he is, do you know his title, Morgan? The director of
Of renewable energy.
Renewable Energy Vermont. So he works pretty closely with that committee, so I've asked him to come in and sort of give us a take also. But feel free to run it by anybody in that committee as well. I think Peter will be able to answer all the questions. Please.
My 2 cents on the carbon dioxide aspect is that it's a really easy number to figure out when you're doing your energy audit, because you're already in there looking at fuel consumptions. Essentially, you're utilizing like EPA charts to figure out how much that fuel consumption, how much CO2 is going to be brought in by utilizing it. So it's not that I don't think it adds any real time or cost to the energy audit production, but it does give you kind of this ability to evaluate different HVAC systems on their CO2 output and long term. So not looking at just the energy use and its long-term operating expense, but also how that impacts CO2 production. So it's not that it shouldn't be a real added cost to an energy audit to include that portion.
Okay. Please,
Just
yeah.
a curiosity question. So it appears that on page 3, from paragraph 3 down, that in dealing with the minimum requirements for an educational facilities master plan, most of the items that are listed down to G are kind of like concept, like what are the goals of the master plan? Whereas an energy audit, it seems specific to facilities that already exist. And it's a little bit out of skew.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're putting the cart before the horse. Here, I think we're trying to create, okay, what's the vision? Not, how do we take the vision and apply it to every single educational facility across the state? That's my only rub. Certainly we need to consider energy use and but
I think you're right, and maybe what we can talk to Beth about is wordsmithing this in a way that says make certain buildings are constructed as energy efficient as possible, something like that. I think you're right, rather than getting specific to the audit piece, you have to be.
Would it help to say, because up here you've got a description of, would it help to say a description of an energy audit, or is that?
energy goals.
Yeah, like a
Energy
description of
goals.
energy goals, I don't know.
Or make
I
sure
hear-
that the energy goals meet, as Senator Hashim is saying, meet the statewide energy goals, something like that.
I agree with what you're saying.
Statewide energy goals.
I would say that typically when you're looking at evaluating facilities, and they're typically like your mechanical systems do have a lot of times your biggest upfront expense in a renovation cost to a project. So having kind of an analysis of where you kind of see how your building's being operated, whether through fossil fuels or biomass or electric, it is pretty critical and kind of determining what the viable use of that building is, and then the long-term planning around it. So having kind of a district plan of, that of fossil fuel reduction potentially, or CO2 that falls in line with state, I think could be involved with the long-term district planning.
It's not at the district level, we're at the agency level,
Master plan.
master plan.
Okay.
Again, I think everything you say is right, but I'm not sure it applies in this section.
Okay.
When this master plan matures, what's contained on page 3 should be, what are the guiding principles?
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, please continue. Page 4, section 3, your recommendation?
Page 4, section 3, just adding energy service companies as a pre-qualified consultant. I think this could really help out different school districts be able to find people to perform these audits for them, and build a bigger book of business of people available to do these services. So just like architecture and engineering, energy service companies provide, I think, that kind of next level of evaluation, which is the cost evaluation in the funding aspect of it. So we're just hoping that we could be included also as a consultant to help with that in that sense.
Please,
Can I
yeah.
play devil's advocate?
Yeah,
Can I
definitely.
consider an energy service company as an engineering company? I mean, aren't you providing engineering analysis specifically in your case to energy services?
Absolutely.
Trying to be, I don't think anybody's trying to exclude a company like yours. I think we need you as part of the process.
Yeah, I agree, please.
I'm just wondering, we have a Global Warming Solution Act, which passed in 2022, I think. And there are certain criteria in there that any new construction for state we have to meet it. If we don't meet those goals, then state can get sued. So did you consult that Global Warming Solution Act when you came up with your plan?
I have not, I mean, I do talk about it. I know that we have, requirements to try to be net zero by 2050. That was kind of what I was trying to put in there about that CO2 and tracking the CO2 reduction. But not kind of specifically, but that is kind of my thought on energy auditing and efficiency and why it should be built into the school construction aid, because we have so many other acts related to global warming that we really haven't brought into CO2 or any global warming aspects into the school construction aid. So that's kind of why I brought some of these amendments up to the bill in the first place.
Yeah, and I appreciate it because it's giving us some conversation around energy efficiency and the need to meet our statewide energy goals and Global Warming Solution Act. So I do appreciate the conversation. But yeah, let's stick, as Senator Weeks said, with engineering consultants and leaving it there. Can you go now to page 6? Eligibility requirement, eligibility criteria under section C. So I think this is on our page 7.
Page 7, yep.
Yep.
So a requirement for supervisory unions to perform an energy audit on a building that would evaluate building's energy use and provide recommendations and costs to reduce it. So I mean, that's pretty straightforward, but that's really just making sure that every time before, the school construction aid moves forward with awarding somebody the funds, that they have a requirement to look at all the different options and long-term plannings on different types of systems. And that not necessarily that they would have to pick the plan that moves off of it, but at least be able to evaluate it and then review any state and federal grants that could help potentially in those 2 items. So I think that's one big item that a lot of times design firms often look over is those state and federal grants and how that has an impact on the total project cost. It's pretty imperative for us to get financing for our projects that we use these state and federal grants to make the finances work on these performance upgrades. And I think in general, it would be good practice for the state to try to utilize all available grants, state and federal. And that's part of the analysis determining whether you should be investing into a school long-term.
Maybe, what do you think? Small 6, small 7.
I mean, I would just say that I know there are supervisory unions that don't have the staffing to do grant writing. I mean, I just know that's a reality, so I don't know if this would come in added staffing. If we have a pass the BOCES bill, maybe we can do it, but I don't know. It seems a little prescriptive.
What the ability to evaluate the ability? as opposed to make it a requirement. I mean, aren't we still at the point where we're trying to figure out, well, how big's the problem and how do we get from where we are to where we want to be? In this case, we want to know if SUs have the capability of writing grants. If they don't, that's just part of the puzzle. That's,
Right, it just says a requirement though, at this point, right, the current language right here says a requirement.
So it's saying analyze the ability or investigate the ability of supervisory unions. Can have the ability or have the
Staff.
capability, staff, et cetera, to apply for state, federal grant. I mean,
either the SU or even the AOE, I mean, just someone to stand up and say, we got another problem. We got all these issues, but one of the problems is we don't have grant writers.
Yeah.
How do we solve the
Yeah.
grant writer problem? The working group is like vision, not necessarily execution.
yeah, so I like that. So if we have, so part of this conversation is around assessing the availability of state and federal grants for these projects. So it doesn't, so we don't need to leave it at that, really.
Well,
It's not each supervisory union, have somebody to really help to understand what state and federal grants might be out there as we move forward.
that was one
I
of the
like
things on the BOCES, but. Right, they have the grant writers.
Right, so we'll keep 6 and 7 very broad in terms of analyzing, looking at state and federal grants.
Yep, no, I agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Just to comment on 6 or VI, to me, it reads that every supervisory union must perform an energy audit on every building that's in a period. To me, that's how it reads, and I'm not sure that's really the intention. But we certainly, in the concept phase, when we're trying to develop the concept of where we're going, we're not trying to pull the lever to have these guys, conduct, facilities assessments to this degree.
I agree.
Yeah, now, yeah, I pulled 6, and I think we just say, we'll add kind of combine 6 and 7 and have some kind of investigation, examination of what's available for state and federal grants. Well, that's.
I mean, if a building's only for storage, doesn't have a requirement to be heated or air conditioned.
Yeah.
That's still a school building.
And then page 7, you have one other suggestion.
Yeah, just as part of the incentive or eligibility, if there could be some kind of aspect in regards to energy use and its consumption. So, there's a lot of stuff that talks about environmental performance, which I think is very close, similar to energy use index and fuel consumption. But essentially just having some kind of index, potentially making sure that we're investing money in our worst performing schools from an energy standpoint.
So tell us the goal of that again.
The goal would be that the goal would be that if you have schools that have really high, a lot of schools just don't really track their energy use and their fuel consumption on a regular basis. It's not something that they really look after. It's more of just a line item in their school bill. So my thought policy kind of on this is that if we built in a energy use index that, would require schools to essentially at least just write down how much fuel they're using on a regular basis when they submit their application. You could at least kind of compare apples to apples from one school to the next to see how well, if that is a well energy efficient building compared to the one next to it. And it might be used.
I could be wrong. I've not been on a school board. Others here have. I feel as though these things are looked at all the time, but I could be wrong. Senator Buick, you're gonna.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think HVAC systems are a huge part of the bottom line and making buildings run. And I think just my experience with rebuilding Burlington, we wanted to look at being LEED certified and what's the other one? LEED and
There's like the Green Building Council certification or net zero requirements.
Zero, yeah, we looked at a bunch of those. It's such a cost savings to be efficient with your energy use, but Eric, I'm wary only in terms of like creating anything that is an unfunded mandate, because we've seen what happens a little bit with that with PCB testing, when you sort of mandate these tests and there's no money to do it. So
Correct.
that's my only issue. with
Yeah.
Any of some of this stuff. So otherwise, I think they're all great ideas.
Yeah, and just putting them out there has helped us, at least helped me. Like through Senator Hashim recognizing that we need some language in there to make certain that we are meeting our state energy goals. And then putting state and federal grants out there, again, having somebody look at those and analyze those, so that we don't lose sight of those funding possibilities. So your suggestions, although we sort of, really edited down, they have produced two really important things that I think we will include in the bill. So thank you for that.
Well,
And
then go ahead. I feel like I accomplished what I needed to do, because that was really my main goal of really just making sure that energy use and kind of that CO2 and environmental impact is really kind of regarded and hopefully prioritized under school construction aid. So
So if I could, going back to what you just said, how do you, in page 8, how do you see environmental performance being different from energy use index and fuel consumption? Could we delete environmental performance and leave the energy use?
I think those two could be looked at. I don't know exactly what environmental performance is, if that has to do with additional kind of hazardous materials inside of the schools, whether that's asbestos or PCBs or other types of environmental hazards. But typically I would think of environmental performance, and if you're saying performance, I think of kind of CO2 output or your impact on the environment, which would be your kind of energy use and fuel consumption. I think
Would it
so.
be,
Very, very similar.
would it be a stretch to just combine the two? Energy performance, energy use index and fuel consumption? It's all, to me, it's all a subset. One's a subset of the other. But
I think environmental, I would just say that I think environmental performance and I would just say it's different, because you can have a building that may not be emitting a ton of CO2 comparatively, because it's a small building next to a really big building. So the environmental performance on it, I guess they are very similar, Senator. I don't see any reason why you can't add those two together now that you mention it. So.
Okay, hey, thanks a million, Eric.
Guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate your
Hear
time.
from
Thanks, Eric.
Renewable Energy Vermont tomorrow, but this has been we'll make these changes that we just discussed. We're about to hear from Ledge Council in about 5 minutes, so you'll see a new draft of the bill online, hopefully later today, maybe tomorrow.
Amazing. I appreciate all the work you guys do, and
Thanks.
I really thank you for your guys' time and ability to get here and
Thanks.
a few words. So best of luck with everything.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye. I'm serious.